So leaving today, I have 9 steps for you to take home with you to go with these 3 different areas of social. 1, make sure you're showing up on the right place. Pick one platform where your customers are already spending their time. 2, write down groups, hashtags, places where your audience hangs out so you know where to go engage with them. And 3, commit to showing up there consistently for 30 days when you first start. Make sure that you get those good habits down. So once you've mastered platform, your next 3, trends. Spend 5, 10, 15 minutes a week scrolling for trends and saving them. It's that simple. A lot of us spend that much time on social media and then some in our personal life. It's not hard to just bookmark things when you see them popping up often, right? Make sure you find a few that feel adaptable for your business. Use them to get ideas. Save them in one place. So that way when you go back to work on social for your business, you've got a whole bucket of things to look at that you can start pulling ideas from and quickly start creating and batch all that content up. And then use the 3, they'll translate, localize, or personalize it to you in a post. And then last, start engaging. Build your list of partners and customers and influencers that you want to engage with. I like to use what I call the 10-10-10 routine. So spend 10 minutes commenting before you post, spend 10 minutes after, and then just, as you're scrolling through daily, spend 10 minutes making comments. Not super hard. It's just about being consistent, right? And then ask questions in your comments to spark the conversation. Don't just say great job or that looks cool. That doesn't provide any value, right? You want to start the conversation or provide some sort of insight that makes people want to learn more, right? Those are your 9 next steps on social. We've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to open the floor. What questions can I answer for you? How else can I help today? Yeah.
Is there a certain amount of times that you should be posting a week on Facebook versus Instagram?
There's not, from what I understand, a specific number of times that you should post. It's more about being consistently posting than anything else. The only platform that has a very specific number that you should post is LinkedIn, which is that as soon as you post your next thing, you kind of reset their algorithm from the last one. So they stop serving up your last post as the primary and your new one. So you want to wait essentially 24 hours between posts on LinkedIn. But there's no rhyme or reason to max number of posts. It's really more of a showing up consistently and how much content can you create consistently. Because they reward you for posting often, but on a pretty regular schedule. So if I batch a bunch of content because I have time one week and post a bunch on week 1, and then I don't do anything for 2 weeks, and then I come back and I post a couple times on week 4, that'll hurt you. But so it's more about consistency than volume. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you give some guidelines on using hashtags?
Yeah. So hashtags are really meant for you to get discovered. They're a way for both users to search topics that they're interested in, and also a way for search engines to determine what the heck this content is about when there's a million different social posts out there and they're trying to figure out if this is relevant to them. So there are kind of 2 rules of thumb that I use for hashtags. One is I try to use a few hashtags that are much broader for kind of the overall topic that people might be searching for. So let's say, I'm a restaurant in a specific place. I probably want to go figure out, how many people are using Eat Sonoma versus Eat Santa Rosa, and make it a very broad Eat Sonoma so that more people are going to find me. And then I try to make a few in there that are pretty niche, that are very descriptive of what someone might be searching for in Google, for example. So in the same way that If I was searching for a hashtag lots of people use to find restaurants in Sonoma County, I might be looking for lunch Petaluma or something like that. That's a much more like search-friendly terminology. And you can use that to tell people or to tell search engines that that's what you should be served up for. In terms of like numbers, a lot of people will like hashtag spam and put a huge block of them in there. I don't find that very useful, frankly. I think hashtag usage has gone down over the years instead of up. So I would just pick a couple, I usually say like our rule of thumb is 3 to 5 really relevant hashtags that people are likely going to search for, or there's like high search volume for, and stick to that. Otherwise, you're just building giant blocks of text that no one wants to read, right? So you have to think about the person who's searching for your content and what do they want to look at, not a giant wall of hashtags. They care more about the content itself. Does that help?
Yeah, I still don't understand the whole purpose of them. Like if you had, let's say you had Jim's Diner in Santa Rosa, would you put hashtag Jim's Diner or hashtag?
Yeah, you can create your own hashtags and use them across every post as you grow, and then people that get to know you well know that that's your hashtag. But for the most part, you want to go broad searchability from a discovery standpoint. So for like Jim's Diner, depending on like where Jim's Diner is, you probably want to figure out, okay, people would be searching for Santa Rosa foodie or something like that, and you can run searches on hashtags within the platform to understand like what's the post volume, how many people are posting on this, and that'll help you kind of understand, okay, lots of people use this specific food hashtag versus this one, so that has a much lower volume, so I'm going to go with the higher volume one, so I have better searchability on it. Yeah.
Hi, Kate. You haven't mentioned any action on a website. There's always a contact me or add to your cart or some action that you want people to take. Do you incorporate those into social media as well?
You can. I'd say there's a definite balance between always having some sort of business call to action in social versus creating education for your product and letting people make that decision for themselves. And that's where really like setting up your profile well so that if I find your content and I go visit you, there's a call to action on the page itself versus not always like in the content. Because again, people don't necessarily go to social because they're looking to buy, right? They want more authentic interactions. So if every single post of yours is about buying something, people are going to kind of start tuning that out because they're not really getting what they're there for. So you can put calls to action in posts, but I usually recommend like spacing that out. So if you have a very specific, sale going on, it's not every single post is go buy, buy, buy. It's let me find a fun, trendy way to tell you about our sale, and then let me educate you on clothing items in our sale, and then let me talk about how you feel when you missed the sale, and it's more about like creating the content around it than about having like a really strong go do this thing.
How about analytics? You hear about Google Analytics. Are there equivalent apps or ways of finding out what's effective?
Yeah, I mean, in platform, every single platform has their own post analytics. So you can look at, your page as a whole to understand, this month, how many engagements did I get and were they likes or comments or shares? What was the reach? So how many accounts saw my page or my posts? What were the impressions? So how many times someone saw one? And those are like typical metrics that you would use to determine, are you growing or not on social? If you're managing multiple pages, there are platforms that you can use to manage them all in one place and pull all of those metrics in. But most platforms do that in-app pretty easily. Yeah.
I have two different questions. Do you think that it's better to have the owner or CEO be the main advocate posting this information, or for them to have somebody else that might be an employee or a lower level individual posting and really talking up the product and the business?
You know, I think it's great to have, especially in small business, the owner face in the content. They don't have to be the only one though, because people like to get to know lots of people. And so maybe the owner is not the person that's going to resonate with me as a customer, but someone who's younger. Or, you know, maybe I mix in both men and women. So you can mix in and like let people get to know your team as well. And it doesn't just have to always be about you, the owner, being on social, which is a nice break for you. But having the owner face and in the content is always good, because they like to know that there are people behind the business and get to know them.
The other question is, I have, and this might not be for the whole audience, but I have multiple businesses. And so one of the challenges that I face is probably my own, I don't know, lack of confidence or overthinking things, in the sense that on social media, I really just have one business that I focus on, but it's to the detriment of my other businesses, so I don't have those listed. So does it make sense to create multiple accounts, or just find different platforms? What would somebody do in that kind of situation?
Are they all selling to the same customers?
No, totally different.
Totally different customers. Then yeah, I think you'd want 3 pages, because the message is going to be very different and the audience is going, what they care about is going to be different. And it may even be that some of them are more for TikTok and some are more for LinkedIn, and so you want to make sure that you're on the right platform for them too. And I think if they're not related to each other and have very different audiences, you'll have a lot of confusion on one page if you try and mix all the brands. Yeah.
How do you suggest we integrate AI in this effort?
That's always like the new question of the day. Honestly, AI is really helpful in a lot of different ways. One is just getting ideas. And that's one thing that I love about AI, is that I can sit down for 5 minutes and start asking it questions to give me ideas about content. You can take one of those trending audios, post it in ChatGPT and say, give me 10 ways that I could flip this for an HVAC company or for horse riding lessons. So that's one way, like ideation. Image creation is also another great use case. Caption writing is another great use case. So there are a lot of ways that you can kind of speed up your creative process and have like your own little creative co-pilot. The one thing I would say is always give them context to your audience and who you're trying to connect with and what you do. So that way they are thinking about it from that correct lens. And then the other thing I'd say is that the first ideas they give you aren't always going to be the best ones. So always probe deeper. So if they give you 5 ideas, tell them I like these 2 and this is why. And I didn't like these 2 and this is why. Give me 5 more. And that'll help them start to really understand, all right, let me come up with more in this vein.
We have time for one more. Along the same vein of the AI, when we do posts, sometimes we'll, be writing stuff, and sometimes maybe I feel I'm getting a little too technical as a contractor, and I want to whatever. So we'll use AI, right? We'll write it in, and then we'll have it say it its way. And I'm always on the bubble of like, well, it sounds better, I think, to the customer the way AI says it. But then my own personal feeling is when I read a post and it seems very much AI, I'm very turned off by it. What is your take on like it being more personal from the business versus seeming like they just used AI?
Yeah.
And maybe phoned it in, if you will.
I usually say, like from a caption perspective specifically, like think about using AI to get yourself 80% of the way there, and then use what they've written for you and make it your own a little bit. Put that little bit of spin of personality on it. Make it a little bit of shorter or longer with some detail or less detail. Some of the things that I know are just very clearly AI because no one was writing like this before is in everyday speech, people don't typically write with em dashes in their content. So getting rid of those is one way to make it feel a lot less AI, or phrases they often use like, it's not just this, it's this. You'll see a lot in AI text. So if you start seeing, like reading through text and you see some commonality between the content, you can start to kind of pick up on those little pieces. And as long as you use it to get like 80% of the way and then put a little personality on at the end, it usually still comes across okay.